Welcome to Built by Us, the podcast where we spotlight the dreamers, doers, and disruptors shaping the future of communities. I'm your host, Jamie Arroyo, CEO of Assets. Today's guest is Tyrik Jackson, a master barber, entrepreneur, educator, and the visionary behind Sharper Image Barbershops. What started as a single shop in Lancaster has grown into a hub for mentorship and community building. Tyrik's story is about more than clippers and fades. It's about legacy, purpose, and redefining what it means to be a neighborhood cornerstone. Oh man. So are you driving back and forth to Philly every day?
Every single day.
Tell me more about that.
10 years.
10 years every day.
10 years.
Wow.
So tell you more about that? Well, my car, I bought it in 21. Mm-hmm. It's a 22, 0 miles, fresh off the truck, delivered. I just clocked at 100,000 miles.
Wow. Okay.
So 22 and...
So what are you doing in Philly?
So I have a school, Premier Barber Institute. Mm-hmm. We've been there. July the 8th, we'll be celebrating our 11th year.
Oh, congratulations.
Yes.
It's a big deal.
About that.
Yeah, real big deal. What inspired you to get into teaching?
So I think I was always a teacher. Mm-hmm. I was a skateboarder as a kid, and all the kids in the neighborhood wanted me to show them, so I would teach them that. And if I had a friend who never fished, and I used to go fishing with my dad a lot, and if he was like, one of my friends would be like, well, I never fish. I'm like, you know what we're doing this weekend? We're going fishing. So I'm there teaching them how to hook. And I think it was just something that was in me. What's interesting is that I never liked being in the spotlight. A lot of people don't see that, right? Because I'm very open, very transparent. And I just hate it. I was more creative. I would like to create stuff and just see it happen and direct it in a way. But I didn't like being in front of the camera. There's not a lot of pictures of me as a kid. Whenever the camera came on, I'd run behind it. I don't know, maybe self-esteem or whatever. But I remember going to a church. I was at a church and there was a youth minister and he forced me to speak. And I just didn't want to. And he was like, look, man, you have a gift. You need to get in front of people. You need to speak. So he gave me some objectives and, I would just do them. And for a while, I was filing away his messages and things like that, which kind of helped me to kind of build and orchestrate messages. And then I remember when I was in high school, I went to McCaskey. And while in McCaskey, my English teacher, Nate Gadsden, I had to write a creative piece on what was my summer like the most memorable moment in the summer. That year, I was visiting my grandma's house, and there was a shooting that took place. And I was caught in the middle of the crossfire. When I say the middle, it's not like an exaggeration of the word. There was a guy who ran past me and sort of like spun me like a cartoon. I got hit and I started spinning. I'm looking at the guy like, what's up? And when I turned around, the gun was probably this close to my face. And I just remember falling to the ground and seeing the flames come out of the gun. And it seemed like slow motion, almost like a movie like The Matrix. I mean, I can visualize all of it. I fell to the ground. I rolled over into some bushes. All the kids scattered and went into their homes, and I was stuck outside with this guy shooting. I remember climbing up the rain spout, and this was between Chester's and Hillrise Apartments, between Chester, Green Street, and Rockland, right in there in that area right there. Yep. So I remember climbing up the rain spout, and my aunt pulled me in the second floor window, and I was upset because y'all locked me out. Right? Like that's how I felt. So when I went in that summer, my creative English writing teacher, Nate Gaston, he told us to write a piece and I wrote that experience. So he read it out loud, or he began to read it, and he asked me, he said, Tyrik, what do you want to do with your life? And I said, well, I'm glad you asked. I'm going to be a barber. And he said, a barber? Why do you want to be a barber? And I said, because that's what I want to do. And he goes, but you're such a good writer. And I was like, well, I don't want to write. And he says, when we have our oral interpretation class, you speak well. And I was like, well, I don't want to do that either. And he said, look, I work for the newspaper. I do freelance writing. I'm writing books. And I work here. Your career could be anything you want. And I said, with all due respect, Mr. Gaston, that is your dream, not mine. And I think I got that from my mom. she was a person that really instilled to just have a strong sense of self-worth. Just growing up, I had a lot of questions about a lot of things in life. And she told me to treat everybody with respect, treat everybody with kindness, love everybody, but know who you are. And so I was a Puerto Rican kid with a black name, and I rode a skateboard. I didn't fit in anywhere, right? So I wasn't accepted in a lot of different circles. I didn't play on the sports team in high school, so I wasn't one of the cool kids. I was in the art classes, so again, I was kind of that weird kid. But then I was in gospel choir. So it's like nothing clicked. No matter where I went, I just didn't fit in. So, my mom, she just kind of instilled that in me. And I was very confident in who I was and what I was saying to him. And I said, with all due respect, that's your dream, not mine. So I told him, I'm going to graduate from McCaskey. I'm going to go to Lancaster School of Cosmetology because there are no barber schools. I'm going to go work for Champ and eventually get my own barbershop one day. And that's all I said to him. So fast forward, I graduated from McCaskey. I signed up for cosmetology school. My mom signed me up. And when she signed me up, she signed herself up. So here I am, 18-year-old kid, fresh out of high school, planning on a career, and mom's coming to school with me. Not what I had drawn out, right?
Yeah.
So, in fact, when I was trying to cut hair, my mom wouldn't even let me cut hair at the house. So that was a little discouraging. I want to cut hair. I'm doing good. I finished school. Like, let me cut hair. She would not let me cut hair in the house at all. So I had to work it out. Eventually, I got the basement. But most people say, okay, that was cool. You got something, right? The problem was they didn't know the basement I had. So we had a leak up the street and there was water in the basement. So every day I squeegeed out the basement just so I can cut hair so that the water wouldn't be wet. Like there wouldn't be water puddles on the floor and the hair wouldn't fall in the water. So, that was my everyday routine in order to cut hair. So when she went to sign up for school, I was kind of confused, right? Like, but what I didn't know is that my mom wanted to do hair when she was younger. And she was very beautiful, always was. She did dance competitions and she would set up her sisters for beauty pageants. My aunt was Miss Puerto Rico. My mom did her hair and her makeup. But she gave up her dream to be a stylist because she got pregnant with me in high school. And so it was a full circle moment for me, right? I'm finishing high school and mom was able to apply to cosmetology school. But there was one requirement. She had to get her GED in order to start. And she ain't been in school in, years. So 18 years, because I was 18. So she had to go back, get her GED. So she did. She signed up, she applied, and we were supposed to start school in 3 months. And she got it all done before those 3 months. And I realized that sometimes you're the threshold for somebody else's breakthrough. And me applying to school and wanting to go to school created the opportunity for her to then go to school. And so, fast forward, here we are now. My mom works at one of my locations, and she's been there working for the last, 17 years now, But, they asked me a question when we were at school. I basically told my mom this. I said, Mom, we're going to go into the school, and my future wife might be in here. I said, there's going to be all these fine women in here. I might find somebody that I'm interested in. And it's going to be hard for me to find that if my mom's hovering over me. Like, you got to let me be myself. And she said, okay. She was quiet, let me be myself. So we went to school every day, or we went to orientation. And then the very first day of school, I remember we were doing hair. We was following some skill sets that they gave us. I did a 0-degree haircut, put out the blow dryer. And I never really used the blow dryer and had to, curl hair with the blow dryer. So I learned that day, and I did it. And I got so excited that I was like, hey, Mom, look. And every blow dryer shut off. I mean, I can feel the heat of everybody's stares on the back of my neck. And she walks over quietly and she goes, it looks good. And then she whispers to me, now you know you done messed up, right? So we laughed. And, the school eventually found out that we were the first mother and son to attend school together. So the newspaper came out. They asked a question. The question was, how do you feel about being in a school with all women? And before I could speak, my mom says, well, he's in touch with his masculinity. And I'm like, this is exactly why I didn't want to come to school with you, right?
Yeah.
So I said to them, my answer was very simple. I don't really care what people think. I want to cut hair, and if this is the only pathway for me to get a professional license so that I can cut hair, then this is what I have to do. And they took a picture of me doing nails, my mom doing the hair, but I was the one who wanted to cut hair, right? So I think they got the picture backwards, but it worked for the newspaper. The article was called "Mother and Son Make the Career Cut Together." That was in 1996. And they asked a few other questions, but one of the questions that really opened the door for all of this, that kind of set everything into motion, was first, I believed in myself. I did that with my English teacher. Then taking the steps to go into school was the second part. The third part really for me was speaking that into existence. They had asked me what exactly I want to do in the next few years. And so I said, when I'm finished here, I'm going to work at Champs. I'm going to get my barber license eventually. I'm going to get my manager's license and potentially open up a barbershop. But I'm also going to get my teacher's license. That was the new part. Because I found a love for what was happening at the school. And I said, I'm going to get my teacher's license and eventually open up a school. Naive, ambitious, unassuming. I was just all in. I didn't have a silver spoon. I didn't come from no wealth and money and stuff like that. So I had no idea how it was going to happen. But I spoke it. They wrote it. It was scribed somewhere. I still have the article. And I think that's what put things in motion. And so as I continued to sojourn through my career, I was able to align myself with people, take positions, make sacrifices in order to put myself in a position to open up a school. And in 2013, we opened up Premier Barber Institute.
Yeah, that's amazing. You seem to be someone that always has had a vision for what you wanted your life to become. What sparks that for you? Like, what was the thing that made you tell Mr. Gatson, these are the things that I want to accomplish? And then once you go to, you're telling the Lancaster newspaper, this is what's going to happen next. What sparks that vision for you?
Well, I think that it's a God-given gift. It's not something that I can just own on my own, other than the fact that it's a belief that I have. And so there's this foresight, right? I mean, I play sports. Like, I'm a golfer. I'm an avid golfer. So you have to see the shot before you hit it. You have to envision what it's going to look like, how the shape is going to go, how it's going to land on the green, the line of the putt. Like, all of that is real. And I've always been in a position where I've had to make different decisions. I just buried a uncle of ours, right? He was the youngest of uncles. He was actually like an older brother for me because he lived with me when I was probably 9, 10, 11, and 12 in that time frame. And he was a teenager turning into a young adult. So he was 17 going into like 23, like somewhere in that time frame. So he was like the only older brother I ever had because I don't have any. I got all sisters. They're all younger than me. I'm the oldest. So I had 3 uncles die of cirrhosis of the liver. And then I had this uncle who just recently passed. But as a teenager, as a kid, I had 3 uncles die of cirrhosis of the liver. My real father was a heroin addict. He died of AIDS. And so before I graduated from high school, I lost 3 uncles. Right after I graduated from high school, 2 months after I graduated from high school, I lost my real father. So there were certain things that I just wasn't going to partake in. Like, you couldn't get me to drink. I've never drank in my entire life. No cocktails, no champagne at a wedding. I just never drank. I just don't have a desire to do it. I never smoked, never tried weed. I think that they were all distractions. And for me, in order to get certain things or do certain things, I knew that there were sacrifices that needed to be made, like going to cosmetology school. I didn't want to do nails. I didn't want to do perms. I didn't want to do pedicures. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to cut hair. Give me some clippers, give me some shears, give me some hair. But I had to do all the things that I didn't want to do in order to do the thing I wanted to do most. And I think that's where a lot of people make a mistake. So some of what you're talking about, having that foresight, it's understanding that there are things you're going to have to do, sacrifices you're going to have to make in order to do the thing you want to do most.
So some people will look at you and think, Tyrik has made it, right? Barbershops, barber schools, successful speaker, playing golf, doing all the great things that success looks like. So do the things that you don't want to do stop after that?
No, not at all. Still, like I want to be a good golfer. Still, I gotta go hit balls and make putts and practice. I'm just not out there good. You have to keep working at your craft. Even as an instructor, I have instructors that work under me now, so I'm able to free my schedule up. I got systems in place. I manage the systems manage the people now. Where before I was working in the business, now I'm working on the business. So from the outside, and I haven't been full-time in my barbershops since 2007. So, and we've had them for 23 years now. So if you create systems that work and you work those systems manage the business, they manage the people. So I spend more time on just managing the systems and allowing the systems to manage the people. Same thing with the school. But I'm still constantly working on myself. Right now I'm teaching teachers. So people will hire me to either come to their school or they'll take a 3-day training with me at my school where they're seeing it happen in real time. But I'm spending 5 hours a day for 3 days with someone who wants me to help them to have a successful school. And so what I've been getting a lot of is people sending me DMs on Instagram, messages, or they'll see me on my live. I do a live show every Tuesday morning, 9:30 a.m. It's called Tyrik Talk Tuesday. So those, and I've been doing that since 2017. I get messages through those platforms and people asking, what do I got to do to come get some training? What do I got to do for you to come out to my school? What does that look like? What does that cost? And I always show value, and we don't have to talk about what it costs. If it's important enough for you, it doesn't matter what it costs, right? So it's all sacrifice.
Yeah. So let's go back to when you were opening up your first barbershop.
Okay.
So you're working at Champs. You decided to go out on your own and open up your first barbershop. One specific piece, so maybe you don't know this, but I used to go to Champs and Flock used to cut my hair there.
Yeah, I remember you were younger.
Yeah, I was.
You had no facial hair.
Yeah, no facial hair. I was 11 years old, walking into Champs for the first time. And one of the coolest things for me was seeing you, Flock, Ahmed at one point, who all respectful entrepreneurs in their own right. But the one thing I remember about you when Sharper Image became to be was the iconic logo. Tell me about where that logo came from.
So there was a guy who I was cutting. His name was Dan, and his art name was Dan Pat. So when I decided to open up my own shop, he was like, yo, I want to do like a logo for you. And actually before that, I had asked Champ. I said, Champ, I think we need to create a logo for the shop. Like, you got the name. Everybody knows the name. It's not on the window. It just says Champ. There needs to be something that stands out. I said, McDonald's has it. Taco Bell has it. I'm kind of going through that whole, I'm looking at business, corporate business, and how that looks. And like, how should our business look? So Dan was like, I want to make this cartoon. And I always had the same image. So he made a caricature of me and he put it up. And not for nothing, once that went up, almost every barbershop in the next year and a half had some sort of iconic logo that they had on their window. In fact, the same image that Dan made for me, I was at an event and a guy passed me his business card. He had my cartoon caricature image on his business card. And I said, where'd you get this? And he said, oh, I found it. Right. And I was like, really? And I said, do you know that that's me? And I had to pull out my stuff. I actually still have it on my phone. And I said, now, do I need to get my lawyers to send a cease and desist letter? And he was like, no. And so over time, I've learned that he really was an admirer of my work. And I didn't know that. But at the time, I was kind of like, this guy's like stealing my logo to put it on his business card. And over time, I realized he became a teacher. He's working at a school. He aspires to want to open up a school. And I met one of his students. And one of his students was like, hey, Amarillo, he really, really admires you. He always talks about things that you've done. He's been watching you before social media. And so I kind of, I kind of get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
At first I was like, what are you doing? But
Oh, yeah, yeah. So, a couple of things you mentioned, whether it's, identifying that barbershops at the time didn't really have a logo, something to identify them. You mentioned systems in the business. Those are some business fundamentals that I don't think entrepreneurs, unless maybe you go to business school or have a mentor that's able to implement those things or help you implement those things. How did you get some of that information?
So it's odd. And when I say it's odd, this happens a lot. I'll do a conference or I'm speaking. I might be the keynote speaker. And somebody will come up to me and they'll say, hey, Tyrik, man, I really like what you were saying. Did you ever read such and such book? And I'm like, no. And they're like, you should. And I'm like, why? And it says, because the stuff that you're talking about is in this book. And well, thank you. I'll take a look, and I'll listen. But a lot of it is just work experience and just having that foresight, looking at how businesses are doing stuff. I never went to a business class. I didn't go to college. I fresh out of high school, went to cosmetology school, worked at Champs. I learned a lot of do's. I learned a lot of don'ts. And then as I was looking at business and how business was evolving, I started looking, how would I model my business? What would I do? So I just had a different lens. I think most people let's just take Barbershop, for example. Most people, they think, I got to get nice chairs. I got to get nice mirrors, a nice station, some waiting chairs, and I'm ready to go, right? I think it's more important to have infrastructure in the business. So the aesthetics and the chairs, yes, that's going to appeal to people, but you can have all this beautiful stuff. But if you don't have infrastructure, your business isn't going to last. When I first went to Champs, everybody who was taking appointments, they were either trying to memorize them or writing them on the mail. It was a piece of mail. They just wrote it 4 o'clock.
A stack of mail that was just on the station.
Just sitting on the station, a scrap piece of paper. And I was like, how does this work? And what I found, because I was the walk-in barber, is that they would always have conflict with appointments. Well, you told me 4. I did. Okay, yeah, give me a minute. I'll be right with you. And you got another 4 o'clock there. So now it's like I got 2 people for now. There's anxiety, there's frustration, there's 5 people waiting. I got 2 people who had a booked appointment at the same time. I was like, that's not a good system. So I bought an appointment book from our supply guy at the time. His name was Todd. He used to come by in a supply truck, and I bought an appointment book. It was empty. And it was listed Monday through Saturday. We were closed on Monday, so that's an empty slot. I didn't have any appointments, but what I started doing was training my clients how to schedule with me. And what I found is that I was more organized than the other guys in the shop because I had an appointment book. And so when clients would leave the chair, I would say, hey, you might as well put yourself in for next week or the following week because it's going to get booked up. It was empty. So my schedule was very simple, right? I was only really starting to get booked on a Saturday. So I only needed 1 slot. I could just have it Saturday, 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 Saturday. But I left it empty Monday through Saturday. And what happened was clients started filling in the book. For them, I will come in on a Monday. Thursday works better for me. And so they began I wasn't even managing the book. The book sat right next to me and I would just tell them, put yourself in the book. So they would go and put it in the book. And I was never behind. Well, I can't say never. If I was behind, it was 2 to 3 minutes. I was always, I really, really focused on being on time because that person is paying extra for that time. So I didn't find myself in the same situations that the other barbers were because I was organized. That was a system pre-technology. That was the technology, right? The pen and the appointment book. So pre-phone technology and scheduling technology, that's how I managed my clients. That's how I kept retention. That's how I kept customers coming. And they were able to book it themselves. So they were my secretary.
Yeah. So, I watched some of your Instagram videos, and I think you talk a lot about, practices that can be applied in any type of business. And you talk a lot about the client experience. What are some tips that you would give, whether it's a new barber or any type of entrepreneur, to focus when it comes to the client experience?
Okay, so I look at so you have clients, you have customers, you have clients, and you have guests. So you have a person that comes in for the first time, they're a customer. We don't know if they're going to come back. A client is somebody that will be a repeat customer right? You start to build that relationship. But when you have a relationship with a client, that client then becomes a guest. And what I mean by that is you'll treat a guest in your home different than you'll treat a client, right? It is what it is. So I'm trying to create guests, right? I want you a part of my community, a part of my family. And when I think about how I treat my clients that become guests, it's more about lovemaking for me. And what I mean by that is we have 5 senses. I try to tap into every sense. So if I'm in a relationship with somebody, that relationship, I need to be able to smell good, look good, sound good, right? Feel good, taste, everything. People are like, how do you do the taste?
Everyone's like, yeah.
So listen, so as a kid, you know, if you go to Disney and you walk in, you immediately hear the sounds. You immediately see, right? You hear roller coasters rolling. You see beautiful buildings. You see characters in dresses. You smell peanuts and popcorn. All of your senses are being affected. That's why it becomes so memorable. You're creating memories with attaching senses to those experiences. And so in lovemaking, and I mean this in the most professional way, right? But like when you're dating somebody or you're meeting somebody for the first time, you're trying to create memories that will last forever. And so it's being able to tap into those 5 senses. Because if you smell something that smells remotely like me, you're probably going to be like, is he around? If we had that memory, right? If there was a food that you ate, you're like, I remember when first time I had this, I had it with him, or he showed me how to eat it, or whatever the case may be. So you're creating love experiences in relationship. And I'm doing the same thing with customers when they come in. They're a customer first, they become a client when they become a repeat customer, but then they become a guest. They feel like they're at home. I had a guy recently come to the barbershop. And I'm gonna give you the visual of this guy. He's sort of has a hipster look. He's got you heard somebody laugh in the background. He's got the flannel shirt. He's got the jeans rolled up. He's got the boot. He has the glasses. He's got the side part, right? You know what I'm talking about. You know the guy I'm talking about.
Yep.
He comes in with his son. His son looks just like the kid from the Christmas Story. You'll shoot your eye out. He looks just like this kid. And he's just a little bit smaller version of him. And he's been coming for a while. And I knew the shop that he came from before. Never asked him. It's not my business. He started booking an appointment. I never gave him a business card. I've never reached out to him. I didn't send him any posted ads or anything. He found us. He booked an appointment. He came in and he got an experience. He continued to come. He's been coming now for 3-4 years now. And just recently, telling you, we were having a conversation, just an open conversation in the barbershop. This was probably about a month and a half ago. I'm having open dialogue in the shop. We're all just chatting about different things going on. And he says, Tyrik, I want to share something with you. And I said, what's that? He goes, I don't know if you know this. He said, but this is the reason I come to this barbershop. And I just kind of looked at him. He says, well, where I was going before, I got great haircuts. I know all the guys. We all get along. We do a lot of the same stuff. He said, but I didn't want my son to think that that's what the world looked like. He said, when I come to your barbershop represents the world that we live in. The diversity, the conversation. My son's comfortable in here, and he's learning that everybody is special. You talk about having a moment. I didn't know if I wanted to cry or what. Because you do things and you don't know how they're going to impact people. And when he said that, it was everything I ever dreamed it would be, right? But I don't know that. It's like the love making in a relationship. You thought you were special to somebody and it didn't work out. Until 6 years later, they call you and say, I'm so sorry. I've been imagining every person I met and I'm trying to compare them to you. And I'm like, oh, so it did work, right? But you just don't know until somebody reveals that to you, right? So, yeah, it's just, I think that you have to create experiences that are memorable, whatever they are. So in a shop, does it look good? Does it smell good? Does it sound good? That's the conversation. That's the music. That's the experience that they're going. Does it feel good, right? Do I feel good when I walk in here? And then taste. There's all kind of things you can have. When I was a kid, it was Tootsie Rolls, right? You get the little Tootsie Roll, and I remember going to the barbershop and getting a Tootsie Roll. I remember that. I don't even like that Tootsie Roll anymore. But when I see that Tootsie Roll, the first thought I have is, I remember going to that barbershop as a kid. And that's what I'm talking about. You have to create memories that are going to last.
This episode is built by Edwards Business Systems. EBS is a family-owned company that has been providing superior office technology and services for over 70 years, specializing in multifunction printers, wide format and industrial print solutions, as well as managed IT and other print programs. With a focus on streamlining business processes, EBS ensures that clients have the technology and support they need to thrive in today's competitive environment. So on the other side, so there's business and then there's family, all right? And I think a lot of times entrepreneurs, professionals, we're always thinking about how do you balance sometimes ambition, success with being a good family person or being a good friend. How do you balance that in your life?
There is no balance. It's a lifestyle. So it's communication at its best. But it's a lifestyle. You signed up to this relationship. So you think of athletes, professional athletes. You think of, I'll name a person. I remember Jerry Johnson locally here. He was a basketball player, great high school player. He ended up going to college, ended up playing overseas, won a bunch of championships at the different leagues that he was in overseas. And it was a lifestyle. Him and his wife, they hardly saw each other. She knew that was the lifestyle she signed up for. There was never a complaint about it. There were times where she lived overseas with him. There were times where she didn't. Her kids went to school overseas, and then sometimes they were here in America, right? And so I used to look at that, and I really admired that because they were young. They were together since like junior high, all through high school, all through college. And they're still married to this day. They have children. Their kids are in high school, right? So when I used to look at that, they had a good understanding. This is what we signed up for. So when I met my wife, she didn't like me.
Before or after the wedding?
No, before. I mean, she probably don't like me now. I don't know, but before, I didn't meet her requirements. Perfectly fine. So at the time, she said, "I don't like Puerto Rican men." I was like, "Okay, it's fine. I don't know why, but whatever. That's your thing." She said, "I don't want to be with anybody who has children." And I was having a kid on the way. So I was in a relationship. We had separated. But so that was up front. I got a child on the way. And she was like, "I don't want somebody that has kid." The other one was, "You're popular." I don't like popular people because popular people are buttheads, whatever, right? Yeah. So I was like, good. We can just be friends, fans. I'm not looking for a relationship. I just got out of a long relationship. I got a kid on the way. I'm not looking for anything. So my cousin introduced us. And she was like, all right, fine. And here we are, 27 years later, we still together, right? So it's a lifestyle. I was already a popular barber in the city, but as I evolved in my career, there were other things, but communication is the biggest part. And I'll give you a few examples of how this had to work for me. When my schedule was my schedule, I was at the barbershop, that was the work schedule. So it's easy to do that. If I was up under her all day, every day for 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden I got to go to work, what happened? You was loving all over me, and now I'm working. I'll spend time with you, and I can spend time with you. And that was the nature of our relationship. As it evolved, we got older, other things happened. I started traveling, speaking, teaching. That became part of it. But it was always an understanding. Here's what's going to happen. If this happens, this is what I'm giving up. If this happens, this is what I'm going to be doing for you. And there were different scenarios and different times in our relationship and in my career change that I had to make some promises, commit to those, and then honor those. And I think when people are ambitious and they're like, well, when I make this much money, we're going to do this. If they don't follow through, she don't trust you, right? You lose the trust factor. So I think in every area that I've made promises and I've committed to those, I fulfilled those promises, which then when I'm saying I got a new bright idea, it's like, okay, I got to give up something, but there's also going to be a return for that. One example was when I was an at-home dad for 3 years. I was traveling a lot, and together we decided, okay, we're going to have a child, because I already had a child, and we were raising this. I had custody of my daughter since the time she was 1.5, so she lived with us, and it wasn't her daughter, but at some point we would want to have children. And so when that decision came, I'm traveling, I'm speaking, I'm working for companies, I'm a consultant in different places. And so she was like, I'm ready to have a baby. And what does that mean? If we're going to have a child, that means I have to give up something and I have to commit to this promise. So we did. But I was the breadwinner. So we decided to have a child. And so for 3 years, I was an at-home dad. I did all the cooking. I did all the cleaning. I did all the laundry. So laundry was done. Laundry was done. I didn't put it away, but it was folded. It was folded on the bed. You put it where you want it, right? But it was done. So, and I did that for a few reasons. Selfishly, I didn't want it to affect my intimacy time. That's selfishly, right? But at the same time, I wanted her to be able to come home, decompress from work, spend time with the kids, and then you can spend some time with me. Because if she came home and had to cook and had to clean and had to do other stuff, there's no time for me. So, so selfishly, that was my motive. But I spent so much time with my kids. I've really got to enjoy just being an at-home dad for 3 years, because the shops were making money. I was doing stuff. I slowed down shows and events, which affected some of the budget. But I don't really live. I don't live outside of my means. You know, I still live in the city. I like living in the city. You know, I only bought a nice car in the last couple years, but besides that, I drove a Toyota for years. You know, I wouldn't have bought the car if I didn't total it. I crashed my car, and there were no cars on the car lot. So I was like, if I'm going to spend money on a car, I might as well buy something I really want. But I made that sacrifice to be at home with my children. And when it was time for me now, this opportunity to work at a school, not own it, but work at it, there was a few sacrifices. I had to give up clientele at the shop, because now I'm going to be working at a school full time, not making as much money as I was making at the shop. So there's a financial sacrifice. Then I had to give up being at home dad. So I only took her to daycare one day out of the week. It was on Friday. So that was my time to go practice and play some golf. And then, you know, because I would practice with her on Wednesdays, right? She was little. So
take her to the range.
Take her to the range with putt and then feed the ducks, because there was a little pond right there. So I had my systems that I did every week. We went to her favorite place to eat. We went to Barnes and Nobles every Wednesday. They did a reading thing. We got animal crackers. We did some finger paint. I was the at-home dad. Like, I did the daddy daycare stuff. And I wasn't babysitting my kid. I was taking care of my kid, right? I think a lot of dads, when they're working and they're the breadwinners, they think, well, I got to watch my kid. No, you're not watching your kid. You're taking care of your child. So I enjoyed it. But now I said, hey, listen, there's an opportunity. There's a school that's about to open. And I'm doing this because I remember feeling how it felt to have that conversation, right? I said, listen, there's an opportunity for me to work at a school. And you know, my dream was to always one day open up a school. And so she's like, oh, great. I said, but that means something's going to have to happen. I can't be at home anymore with the kids. We got to do daycare. But she didn't like that. She's like, well, I don't know about that. I'm like, well, you can't stop working, right? You're working. I'm not trying to interfere with that. But this school opportunity is not going to be here forever. I got to make a decision. It took me 2 months to make that decision, because she wasn't sold on the idea. Let me tell you something. We had an agreement. We had an understanding. I went to work, and in 2 months, she said, I can't do this. And I said, do what? She says, I'm taking her to daycare. I got to pick her up after work. Then I got to go home and cook, and I got to do the laundry. And I just sat there. I was like, I just waited. I let her just say it all. And I said, we had this conversation.
Yeah.
We spent 2 months back and forth making sure that we were both clear on what was going to happen. And I made a promise. I said, you got to let me get through this phase. I'm going to open up a school. I'm getting paid training right now. Eventually, I'm going to open up a school. When I open up my school and we get to this threshold, you can stay home and do whatever you want. You want to go get massages. You want to go to the spa. You want to go ahead. You could be the at-home mom. And she was like, well, I like to do my own thing. You can do whatever you want. So she said, well, I want to go back to school. I said, you can go back to school. You have to let me get through this growth phase. These are growing pains for both of us. And so again, promise, sacrifice. It's a lifestyle. But because the communication was clear, it always made it easier. I know I went around the block to cross the street, but...
Oh, that's helpful. And I think there's something about seasons as well in life that I think folks, sometimes it's not commitment for ever. It's during this time, right? Let's get through this season and then there's a new season. And how does that change the dynamics of the relationship sometimes? So when you think about the vision, the future, so you're constantly thinking about what's next, what's coming up for you? What are some things you're thinking about?
I really like the consulting side of things. I think a lot of people, when they do some stuff and become somewhat successful, depending on who's looking at it, right? The consulting side starts to really take off, right? Because you're experienced, you have the knowledge, people want that information. I enjoy doing that. I enjoy a lot of the speaking engagements that I do. So I see more of that. In 2019, I probably traveled 32 weekends out of the year, right? And I was getting paid everywhere I went. I was to Russia. I was in Moscow. I went to London. I was in Birmingham. And these are all paid events. People are flying me out. Russia was intense. That was awesome, right? But I mean, I'm getting paid to go to all these places. I'm getting paid to speak only for an hour, right? And I'm like, I like this. Like, this is great. I'm out. I give a little bit of my knowledge, and then people want to hire me for some consulting privately. So it just creates more leads. I really, really enjoyed that. But I still want to create more schools. I want to partner with some people and create more opportunities for schools. I think we're at that point. My business partner, he's got to hire somebody to kind of replace him. And I think he wants to give it up, but he don't want to give it up. I think he likes sort of the control thing. I'm like, that's fine. If you don't see me here, don't be mad at me.
Yeah.
Because I got systems in place and people are working, they're doing what they have to do. But if you want to be here, like, you got to hire somebody to replace you and then manage the system that manages them. That's it. So you can free yourself up and you can go play golf and spend time with your wife and go travel and go see your grandkids. So don't get upset when I go on my golf trips. I don't want to hear it. Because there was a period where it's like, hey, you're taking a lot of time off. Okay, I'm not getting paid hourly. I'm an owner. We own this together. I'm an owner and my work's getting done. My workload is getting done. No matter how it's getting done, it's getting done. I got to oversee it. I got to manage it. You're upset that you don't have that luxury. Eso no mi problem, brother.
So my last question for you.
Last? Well, this is it.
Last
Are you kidding me?
Look, we could keep going.
Hey,
we'll see how it goes. But I think about, I'm constantly thinking about 15-year-old Jamie and what he wanted to see, the future look like. If you could go back in time to 15-year-old Tyrik, what is some advice that you would give him?
So I would tell him to ask more questions and shut up. When I was young and I worked at Champs, I didn't know how to say I understand. And I don't know if it was a cultural thing, because I heard my kids start to do it and I had to correct them. But Champ, he corrected me. I had clients, they would talk to me and they would say stuff to me. I was like, oh, I know. And that was my reply to stuff. And I really was trying to say, I understand. I get it. Thank you. I appreciate that. But I didn't have those words. That's not the first thing that came to mind. And so I kept saying, no, Champ pulled me to the side. He said, you know it all. And I was like, what are you talking about? He said, you're just a know-it-all. I was like, that just came out of left field. What are you talking about? He goes, every time somebody's trying to teach you something, you respond with, I know. Why do you do that? And I was like, because I'm listening to them and I want them to know that I understand. He says, then say I understand. He said, because you keep saying I know. And what happens is people who want to give you information because they see something in you and they think that you're special and they want to give you some game, they're going to stop giving it to you because you know everything. And it hit me. I was like, oh. So you know what I said to him? I was like, I know. I did. I really did. I put my head down and I said, I know. And we laughed. And I had learned how to say thank you, to say I appreciate I appreciate it. Even if it was something that I didn't know. I was like, ooh, that's good information. Thank you. Because then people just wanted to keep giving you information. So the thing that I would tell Tyrik is to ask more questions. You know, I think because I didn't have the uncles to go to, I didn't have, you know, my father was an amazing provider. He worked hard for us. I used to think that he was the strongest person in the world. My mom taught me how to love. She taught me how to love. My dad taught me how to take care. And although they were separate and I had a dysfunctional family life, again, I've been married 27 years. My parents were never married. I made choices to not be the things that I experienced. I didn't choose drugs because my uncles, those things. So, but they did have some strong things in them that I took from them. And my dad was a great provider. So in spending time with them, learning the things that I've learned with them, I was able to implement the good, kind of eat the meat, throw away the bone, you know, cut the fat. I learned to cut things out. And I learned over time that my mom wasn't a know-it-all, right? She didn't know everything. And over time, I had to teach her a lot of stuff. And I started realizing that I was outgrowing them because of the people that I was around. And I began to learn how to ask more questions. But early on, I was afraid to ask questions. You know, I was very confident with the stuff I knew. But if I didn't know anything, I would just change the conversation and put it to an area that I was more comfortable with. You know, if with anything, sports, I wasn't a guy who followed stats and what college they went to. And so if there was a sport conversation going on, I wanted to talk about Michael Jackson, you know, or Eddie Murphy movie or something I just watched because I understood that. So I learned to switch the conversation for me at the time, but I would go back and tell me, I'd say, hey, guy, listen, just ask more questions.
Yeah. How do you impart that on the people that you work with? So a couple dynamics there. So working with your mom is one thing. So I'm curious about that relationship and how that is.
I sent her home for a week.
Yeah.
How about that? Imagine sending your mom home for a week.
Like suspended.
Go home.
Yeah.
Excuse me?
No, I can't imagine doing that.
Pack your stuff up and go home. And she's like, I'm your mom. I said, not today. You're Iris. You are Iris. She said, I can't believe you. I said, go home. She was so mad at me. She violated. She disrespected everybody. Now, here's the deal. Most people won't get this. I know you will. At the time, I had 11 people working in that one location. And she was in there. She was right in her position. There was somebody who was having an inappropriate conversation. There were some challenges that he personally was going through in his personal life. He was going through a divorce and a separation. So she was harassing him on the phone while he's working. It just was a mess. So she goes kindly and says, hey, listen, why don't you go to the bathroom and have that conversation or go outside? Everybody don't need to know your business. Way to go, Mom. And he was like, I'm sorry. And he tried. And then again, throughout the day, and then the third time, he's frustrated with what he's got going on. She comes over trying to be, hey, listen, I think that you need to, take. He's like, why don't you shut? And he cursed at her. So she flips out. She loses her entire cool. And I did my investigation. I didn't just, first off, they're both going home at this point, right? But I asked everybody in the shop, I said, hey, look, talk to me. What's going on? I need to know what's happening. I did my investigation. I got their stories, and I made a decision. I said, both of you got a week off. Like, just go home. And she didn't like it. He didn't like it, obviously. And I said, look, you both can pack your stuff up. You don't have to return. My mom didn't like that either. And so when it was done that day, later on that day, I went to her house, and I sat with her. I said, Mom, you're always going to be Mom. But you have to understand something. If I let you go, I lose the other 10 people that work at the barbershop. Because, don't piss his mom off. Don't frustrate his mom because he's always going to take his mom. You were wrong. And everybody saw that you was wrong. But if I side with you, I lose all 10 of them. They help pay for your grandchildren to live and to survive. So what do you want me to do? You want me to just stick with you and it's just going to be me and you? We're going to ride this to the end? You going to pay these bills? You going to cover this stuff? Because I can get rid of all of them if you got my back. She still didn't like it. And if she was here and we brought that up, she started, yeah, I ain't like that. And what I had to explain to her, I said, when I was growing up and I lived in your house, I had to abide by your rules. It didn't matter what the rule was. I was paying rent at the house. They were your rules. You know what? Let me go into that for a second. Paying rent at home. You want to hear what this was? Now, what I learned through that was great. She taught me how to save money. She taught me how to budget. She taught me how to do that. But she had a poverty mindset, right? And Mom, just forgive me if you hear this.
Yeah.
So there was a period, Section 8, welfare, every program available for us, right? She was a single mom, 2 kids, then it was 3, all the same dad, like raised us all. And, I never thought we was poor. I didn't think we was struggling or anything. We lived a good life. I had my mom who loved us and took care of us, made sure we was good to go. My dad was always there, even though they didn't live together. My dad in the wintertime would change the storm windows. In the springtime would put the screens on. If the refrigerator broke down, there was a refrigerator there before I got home from school. My mom's car got demolished. It was parked. Somebody ran into it, totaled her car. Within 6 hours, my dad comes with another car for my mom. Like that's who he was, even though they were separated. She was in another relationship. Didn't matter. My kids are in this house. I'm going to take care and make sure she's good so that they're good. Whether the guy liked it or not, there's no my beast now. So this is the man that I grew up around. Well, when I lived at her house and I was paying rent, my mom didn't have rent. Her rent was like $11 at the time. And I'm paying like $250 a week or something like that. And I didn't think about it then. It was when I was like,
math ain't mathin'.
Like,
what's
wait a
going
minute.
on?
Like, no, at the time I didn't know. Mom, you need anything? Because prior to that, when I was a kid, I worked since the time I was probably like 10. I was a paper boy. I worked at Will Powell's Insurance. I did vacuuming and cleaning stuff. I did rake the leaves, pull the weeds. I did all kind of stuff to work and earn and make money all my life. So whenever I got paid, I gave my mom my entire check. She gave me a $20 a week allowance. That's all I had. I had to spread $20. $20 don't do nothing today. But back then, in the 80s, 90s, $20, man, I can live with $20. And so at the end of the summer, most of the time it was summertime gigs, but I had some stuff during the school year. But at the end of the summer, here's money for back to school clothes. This is your money that you earned. It wasn't all of it. I still had money saved up. She created an account for me. And then she said, if I'd have let you have all this money would be gone. But look what we were able to do. And so she kind of taught me. She didn't understand investing. She didn't understand credit. But she did teach me how to manage the little bit that I had. But I gave her my entire check for whatever she needed. And when I started making some serious money as a teenager, cutting hair and stuff, I gave her whatever she needed. What do you need, Mom? If she said, I need you to grab some milk at the grocery store, I came with 2 gallons, because that's how my dad was. Yeah. So over time, I was paying rent. I wasn't allowed to have a girlfriend in the house. I had to be in the house at 10 o'clock. And now I'm like 21. I didn't leave my house till I was like 23, 20. And I was trying to stay till 30. I was. Not because of responsibility. I was trying to build something.
Yep.
I wanted to save my money and build something. I got in a relationship. Relationship meant I couldn't save as much money. Now I got somebody else that I'm trying to impress and trying to give a good life to. And, so now I'm not saving any money. In fact, you talk about sacrifice. I know it's going to keep going down these holes. Do you remember when I had that Infinity? I had that green Infinity. So I had a red Tracker. That was my first car. Then I had a green Infinity. I was 20 years old with an Infinity. And I started realizing that it was a waste of money. I had this nice green Infinity with rims, a nice little system on it. And every single day it sat out front of Champ's Barbershop for hours. I drove it from East Strawberry Street to East King Street. That was a 10, 12 block stretch. And I was paying monthly payments on it and insurance. And the car sat there every day. And through having relationships and talking to the right people, I started to realize, like, I'm wasting money on this car. For what? Like, nobody, I ain't trying to impress nobody. Like, I like the car. I wanted it. And I ended up selling the car. One of my clients came in and he says, I like your car. I said, you want to buy it? And he said, yeah. I was like, you serious? So we pulled the Kelly Blue Book out. We found the value of it. I think I owed maybe like $4,000 or $5,000 on it at the time. And I was like, he going to give me $12,000 for this car? Heck yeah.
Take it.
I went and bought a $1,500 car. And I rode that. And I was building something. I got back to time to build, time to build. Make sacrifices, long term. Make sacrifices, long term. Make sacrifice. That's what it came from.
So what do you tell people? So one of the challenges that I see, especially in entrepreneurship, is I feel that folks want the rewards before they make the sacrifices, right? They want the car before, and you did it the opposite. You understood that you wanted to
I did it the wrong way
something.
first, right? I went and got the cool car. Listen, it was so bad that, so I was taking care of my little cousin. He was living with us. And so it's like I had like this son. So I paid him to clean my room, to do my laundry, to clean my car, right? And he was just always around. So he got paid. He had a cell phone when he was young, and I was taking care of him. And then he wanted to drop out of school. Everything got cut off. You didn't get nothing. So I bought the fancy cars, but then I didn't have him anymore. So you know what I started doing? Every weekend I would go out shopping. Instead of doing laundry, I just bought more clothes. And then it got piling up and piling up, piling up. And I remember I wanted to do something. I forget exactly what it was, but it was important for me to have some money to do something. And I looked at all my shoes, and I looked at this pile of clothes, and I was like, that's my business right there. I was like, I just spent my business. It's sitting right there. And I sat there just looking at it and just was like disgusted, right? So I had to switch the mindset. It's like, nope. Don't even walk into a store. Because I know if I'm walking to a store, I'm going to see something, I'm going to like it, I'm going to get it. I don't go into stores. I don't, I like nice stuff, though.
Yeah.
I like nice stuff. But it's seasonal, right? There's a period where I can say, okay, I'm going to spoil myself a little bit. And then I started doing other things. Like I used to sell aprons. It was another business that I had. So the aprons cost me $8 shipped to the house, right? I had them built, made, manufactured, $8 to the house, and then I was selling them online for $120. Right. So I took a $2,000 investment, made about 30 grand. Right. So it was, so it was great. But I didn't spend for years prior to that. So once that business was taken off, I was like, all right, if I sell X amount of aprons, I can treat myself. So that became the way. And then you start learning about assets, liabilities, and then it just changes the game after that. Right. But if you can't do that, with something simple, right? And you're just constantly buying things that you feel good about. Yeah, you look successful. It's a facade of success, right? But it ain't success.
Yeah. And there's something about impulse control, being able to wait for a long period of time for something.
Absolutely.
Discipline to be able to withstand from doing those things.
I think gas stations hurt themselves when they did pay at the pump.
Why is that?
Because impulse control. When you go in to pay for gas,
you're not
like
buying the
let me get
zebra
this,
cakes.
Let me get this. Let me get that. Ooh, you see this, and then you'll do that. So I recognize that. I'm like, I'm not going into the gas station. I'm paying at the pump because I know if I go in there, I'm going to get 3 or 4 items because I'm a snacker, right? So I would discipline myself that way. Mike Tyson has a thing that he does. So I don't know if you've ever heard it, but when he used to train for a fight, his Achilles heel was ice cream. He loved ice cream.
Sounds like me.
So what he would do is buy the ice cream and leave it in the freezer. Most people say, well, I'm not going to go buy ice cream because if I go buy the ice cream, I'm going to eat it. He went the other step. He would buy the ice cream and see if he had enough self-discipline to not eat the ice cream.
That sounds like torture.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, but it's building that muscle, right?
Yeah, well, whatever it takes. Each person's going to have their thing, right? Everybody's got their thing. And you have to learn to be disciplined in that area. When I go to schools and I talk to kids, I tell them this, distractions are the destruction of your dream in slow motion, right? I don't care who it is. It could be your parents who aren't supportive. It could be social media. It could be that significant person that you think is going to be your forever right now. It could be your classmates. It could be that guy in the back of the room who's a class clown who's always distracted. It don't matter. Whatever you're trying to do, distractions are the destruction of your dream in slow motion.
It's a bar.
Yeah.
Love it. I think we're going to end on that note.
Okay.
Love it.
You got
Love
it.
it.
Appreciate
man,
you,
appreciate you. Appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for today's episode of Built by Us. A huge thank you to Tyrik Jackson for dropping gems and reminding us that business isn't just about profit. It's about people, passion, and pouring back into our community. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. I'm Jamie Arroyo. Until next time, keep building what matters.
This is the Built by Us podcast, brought to you by Assets. Visit us at assetspa.org to learn more about the products and services we provide, and you can follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube.